collect data. One is observational. Observational means, you observe the research field, you observe the situation and collect data, right? Suppose that you want to see how many cars pass in this traffic light. Observational, that means you just stand there and count how many cars pass the traffic light between 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. That's observation, right? So how many people walk into the store? It's observational. You can count how many people come to the store. Say how many birds sitting in the tree. How many birds come to the tree between in the day. So you need to observe. You observe what is happening. So observational data are collected by observing the values variables under consideration from a random sample without controlling any of the factors. Right? So you don't control any factors that affects the data. Right? Now, what do you mean by controlling? Yeah, what do you mean by controlling?
The data can be biased, you cannot.
No, controlling means that you influence the data. For example, birds. So the birds come to the tree a normal day. Okay. So the traffic in the color light in the normal situation, right? Controlling means that you do something to increase that. Suppose that you provide food to birds. That means you're controlling. That means you controlling the situation. Suppose that you want to know how many people walk into the store in a normal day. That means you're not doing anything. Suppose you do a big advertisement and suppose that give free lunch. That means you are controlling the situation, right? Controlling any of the factors. Okay? So the experimental data. So experimental data collected by observing the values of the variable under a controlled environment. That's an experiment. Experiment means you control an environment. Can you give me an example? Controlling environment. So, for example, exam. Suppose if you announce that today is an exam, so I want to see how many students coming. So that's a control environment. If you want to know how algae or bacteria or viruses grow, you can control the environment. In a lab, you can grow virus, you can grow bacteria, you can grow algae. So you can control algae by temperature. You can control the temperature and see how fast algae grow. That's a control experiment. Yeah, sorry, that's an experiment. Okay, so we do experiments in labs. Scientific lab. So that is experimental data. Okay. So how do you otherwise we collect data? This is survey methods. So we have personal interviews. I think you know what is a personal interview. And the next one is a phone interview. Okay, so personal interviews. Personal interview means if you want to collect data, you can directly interview the person. So Australian Bureau of Statistics, if they want to collect data, they simply come to your, knock on your door and sit with you, and they fill a questionnaire. So that's a personal data, personal interview. Okay, so you go with the questionnaire, set of questions, and sit with the person and you ask questions and fill the data. That's personal interview. So the personal interview, can you do personal interviews all the time? What are the problems with that? Personal interviews, if you collect data using personal interviews, that's the best way. You know, some questions others don't understand, so they can clarify what do you mean by that, rather than giving false information. What is the disadvantage? Yeah, what's the disadvantage? So the disadvantage is it can be very expensive. Yeah, what do you mean expensive? So expensive means this will cost you a lot, because personal interview means somebody you have to use someone to do the data collection, and you have to pay. Another cheap option is phone interview. That means you can call someone rather than you sitting with that person. Yeah, that is the second one. Like personal interviews can be expensive. Suppose that you want to interview someone in New South Wales, someone in Darwin, someone in Western Australia. So you have to personally go. So that's going to be quite expensive. Then to overcome that situation, then you can do phone interview. You can pick up the phone, you can ring the phone. But the problem is, when you call someone, that's easy for the other people to ignore your call. Because if somebody publish a data, that means they have actually made a big effort to collect data. You can imagine how difficult to collect data. When somebody call you and ask, say you are an overseas student, so we want to get some information. So if you're not happy, you won't answer that question, right? You don't answer that telephone call. So that's going to be very difficult. At least if you call five people, maybe one person will pick the phone, right? So how do you get that information? So phone interview is easy, but there's high chance of people not answering your call. So that's called lower responses, because they might refuse your phone call. But if you personally go, it's very hard for people to ignore, because it's personally someone is coming. The next one is questionnaire. It's called self-administered questionnaire. So self-administered questionnaire means, like on the Google, there's a questionnaire. They will send you the link. You can go to that page and you can fill the questionnaire. Or you can post that, old-fashioned. You can print it and post it, so they can get it from the post. And then they write it and then send it to you back. That's very old-fashioned. But self-administered questionnaire means they send you the questionnaire and you fill it out. That's going to be very easy, but there's a lot of chances of incorrect responses. People either ignore or they give you wrong information. I mean incorrectly, because they might misunderstand the question sometimes. Okay, so now next one is sampling method. So the first one is how you collect data. The next one is how do you design the sample, right? So let's do an experiment, or let's do a simple question. Suppose you want to collect data on savings. You want to study about savings, right, among Australians. So how do you collect data? So what is your plan? So you have to collect, find a sample, because you have to interview people to understand their savings, right? Savings behavior. So where do you get the sample?
Can you go to ABS?
You are doing it, not ABS.
Oh, like primary research.
Yeah. Because some research, you do some research, you don't have the data. You have to do it. So how do you collect, how do you decide the sample? Yeah, someone?
Maybe you sample a suburb.
Sorry?
You sample like a suburb, like one suburb.
Suburb.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Every suburb.
If you have the money and time, you probably don't have this.
Yeah. Okay. Every suburb. Alright. So then, whom are you going to talk to? Any other suggestions? Yeah, so then we can have when you do sampling, so there are different types of sampling. One is probability sampling. Probability sampling is that we collect samples randomly. For example, probability sampling techniques. So one method is simple random sampling. So simple random sampling means you are picking your sample randomly from the population. Suppose that you have to pick 3 balls from this box. So this is this is the population, and you pick 3 balls. That means you pick randomly 1. Okay, and then the second one randomly, third one randomly. So this is a random, simple random sample. Simple means we are not doing anything we just pick 3 randomly. So that's simple random sample. So what is the problem with this method? Any problem with this method?
It's too random.
What's the problem with too random? I mean, your studying means you question, right? That's the meaning of studying. You need to question why you're doing it. What is the problem with this? That's the way you learn.
So you see the screen, right? There's the blue, white, and red face. So like there's a chance you might get all 3 red face.
Yeah, that's right. Very good.
I don't know what that calls.
When you do random sampling, if you pick randomly, you might get all color, same color 3. Is that possible?
Yeah.
Yes. Because in the actual scenario, so suppose somebody asks me to bring the sample, so I take this sample and then give it to the person, and suppose that all whatever I pick is 3 white balls. So I give it to you, this is the sample, and you open it and see there's 3 white balls. So what is your opinion about the population? So you think the population has only white balls. What do you think? Yeah, that's it. So that will give you a very incorrect impression about the population. Suppose that I have to take a sample from this class. So I take random sample and I find 3 boys. And my sample is 3 boys, and then someone might think, oh, your class only has boys, no girls. So that's going to be a problem. So the sample should represent the population. Okay? Sample should well represent the population. So what can you do then? Yeah, what can you do to avoid this issue? Any suggestions?
Get more separate.
Huh?
Get more separate.
I mean a bigger sample. So that's going to be the same thing. So that means if this simple sample, random sampling doesn't work, you can use another method. That's the question. That's the solution. You can use a different method. Yeah. So I want to mark your name as well, Hassan, Nikesh, Jeff, Kehan, Kathy, Sohi, Aquila, David,
Yep.
Eugene,
Okay.
Yushin, Listen, Lit, Daniel, Eugene, Poonam, Omraj, yeah, Sanjay, Ramon, I'm Ali. Yeah. See here. Okay, so sing. Vishal sing. Okay. Did you get what we discussed? You were sleeping all the time. Like the other one. Okay. because if you are here, I'm responsible for your learning. So I want to make sure who pays the attention. I mean, they ask questions like if the student is here and if you don't perform, you know. So that's it. If you don't come, that's a different story. So the next question. So if your simple random sampling doesn't work, then we have to go for other method. So other method is stratified random sampling. So in order to collect data, right, and represent your sample in all the layers or all the groups, so we divide this one into different groups, right? So for example, if you want to pick a sample from a school, right, if you do randomly, you might get someone from primary as well, only primary students. If you pick randomly, you might get only seniors. So if you want to get a sample, we can divide our population into strata. Strata means different groups, okay, or we call sets, and then from each set we can draw number of students randomly. So that's it. So that's how you get the stratified sampling. So in this case, you have derive some few students from this group and another this group, another juniors and seniors. So that then this sample consists all the students. So cluster sampling is the other one. So the cluster sampling is used when you are actually collecting data in a in a widely dispersed population. So that's why I asked that if you want to get a sample from Australia, so how do you get, right? Because sample should represent the population, and then the population is very widely spread. Okay, so that means you can, you can pick some number of people from one suburb. You can say Brisbane is the suburb, this is the sample as well. So that doesn't mean it represents entire Australia. So then you have to use cluster sampling. So different clusters in different areas, and then pick randomly from each cluster. So this one is probability versus non-probability sampling. Non-probability sampling is that, earlier we picked anyway, finally, randomly, but we organize in a different way. So we use non-random sampling. That means, for example, convenience sampling. Convenience sampling is that select individuals that are most readily available. So if I want to take a sample, say I think this is the sample, very convenient. So my classroom is the sample of Griffith College student, convenient, right? So this one, then I have only the business students, okay? But it's very convenient. I don't have to contact anyone, so that's convenient sampling. So this one example is given an exit interviews. So suppose someone who they want to interview people who had lunch or dinner, and they use at a restaurant, they use exit interviews, right? So when they exit, so they ask you to fill out the questionnaire. So exit interviews. So snowballing. Snowballing is called referral sampling. It involves using the initial respondent who are typically chosen using probability methods to help identify others. Especially people sometimes we don't know others, especially people who use drugs, right? So if, I mean, if you know someone using drugs, so maybe police or maybe hospital, so they somehow get hauled into one person who use drugs, but you can ask, can you introduce one more person, because we want to get some data, so that probably he knows the others who take drugs. And then we take another one and ask him to introduce one more. So you increase your sample using snowballing method. Okay, so criminals, that's how you usually we get called into criminals. You know, they introduce others, either questioning or either different investigations. Because you can't pick someone randomly and say this is a criminal. You can pick someone randomly, but you can't pick this type of people randomly. So we judgment sampling. Judgment sampling is you have to make sure some group of experts, right? Sometimes if you want to see where the oil is, so you want to drill earth to get oil, but you can't randomly drill because it's expensive, and experts need to say this area has oil, this area has minerals, this area has whatever. So there is an expert with knowledge. So if you want to know, see sharks, where do you see sharks? If you want to see other like whales, they're experts, the knowledge, right? So so these methods have their judgments, their weaknesses and advantages. So very important thing is that here sampling errors versus non-sampling errors, because you are doing statistics, so you should know 100% what is sampling error and non-sampling error, right? So suppose that I pick a random sample and it only consists boys, so then it is a sample only boys, but actually there are girls as well, but that is called a sampling error. It is because the method of sampling, that's called sampling error. So if you go and stand in front of the shopping complex at work day in the lunchtime, it's most probably the retired people come, right? If you have a coffee shop in the morning, 10 o'clock, and if you interview, probably they are not working, maybe retired. So there is a bias sampling error. I mean, people who are working mostly, they can go in the lunchtime or weekends, right? If you interview someone in the school, near the school, then probably all are school children. So there is a sampling error, because the reason why we take a sample, because we cannot get the whole data. We cannot study the population. So therefore, if you want to study the population, we take sample. But we have to make sure sample actually represent the entire population. Okay, that's a sampling error. In order to avoid the sampling error, you have to use the right method. You can't use, if you think there is going to be a problem if you use random sampling, use stratified sampling, use cluster sampling. Okay, that's anyway, sometimes sampling errors cannot avoid, right? So for example, this one, what is the population mean? 78, right? But if you take a sample, the sample mean is 75. Suppose that you take a sample and then you said, oh, the blood pressure is 75, and somebody else take a sample, they says blood pressure is 67. Yeah, so there is an error. Error means the difference between this mean and the sample mean, that's the error. Okay, so whatever you do, you cannot actually get exact population value. So there will be a sampling error. Okay, so you cannot avoid that. However, there is non-sampling error that is very serious. Where is that? Yeah, non-sampling error means when you make a mistake, alright? So that's a human error. So when you write numbers, suppose that I said my income is $1,000 and you type it as 10,000, you put one more zero, that's a serious error, we call human errors. So when you collect data, those days somebody has to feed data into the computer. So therefore, when they feed data, they make mistakes. So that is a non-sampling error, human errors. So these things happen when you acquire data. Okay, so they are more serious. Okay. Yeah, so that is one thing. How do you reduce sampling errors? And based on whatever we discussed, how do you reduce a sampling error? Okay. What another method?
You do it as many times and then you divided it.
Doing as many?
Like you do it multiple times and then you divide to get like a neutral number. Like
Okay. Yeah. Yes. So if you want to avoid sampling errors, the best thing you can do is make your sample as bigger as possible. That's it. Okay. If you can make your sample bigger, you can reduce the sample error. If your sample is smaller, very much like to make a sampling error. I mean, if you can't make a sample bigger, you can't do anyway, that's not your problem. But because your sample is smaller, because you don't have enough money, maybe you don't have enough time, so you keep your sample very small, then you are going to make anyway a big sampling error. But if you do these human errors, it will not go away even though you increase the sample size. Okay? I think that's all. Any questions? So anyone that I did not ask me?
You should.
Which one?
Ah, this one. This one. No, no. That one. Yeah.
Thomas? Not here. Ali is here? Yeah, thank you. you next week. Yeah, one thing is that you have to use Excel. So next week we are going to learn how to go, data visualization. So we collect data, we need to analyze. So the best thing is visualize data. So that means we draw graphs. Yeah.
In the quiz one,
The quiz is open on Friday.
yeah, I wanna ask the rules. It says like you must sit in the classroom and use the Zoom link during the quiz.
Yeah, that's the rule, but I don't really want to use Zoom link. So you can go to your evidence of learning, and then there's a link. Just click the link and you will do this.
So you don't need to be in a
Zoom
Zoom.
link means usually Zoom link. Through the Zoom link, I need to supervise you. Yeah, that's fine. If you want me to supervise, I'll do it. Help you. Yeah, alright, let me show you. So if you go to evidence of learning, link the quiz. So you can access the quiz here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not now, you can't do it. So because the setting is, it will be open on Friday. So I'll send you an email, exactly what time you do it.
Okay.
Is there a practice quiz?
Yeah, I told you already before. Haven't you done?
I saw, but I was confused.
Sorry?
I was confused.
You couldn't, alright. Switch the role to student. Let's see how it looks like to the student. Yeah, there's a practice.
So you wanna go to Zoomster?
Cũng được.
Yeah.
Ý ông muốn đi Zoomster hay là ông muốn đi cái chỗ
That's going to be very easy. But don't take it too
cái chỗ đó chỉ bán mô hình chứ nó không có gì về anime.
Look at week 1 and week 1 to 3 contents.
Nó nói xấu gì đó.
Thì không.
Yeah. Đến nó khoảng 40 đồng.
Tính mua gì ở đó không?
So this quiz actually, I think I sent you an announcement, right?
Sáng là nó sẽ
It's open 11 a.m. and
như vậy giờ
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I sent already an
dưới lòng
announcement.
năm trước nha. Có gì nếu như mà ông xuống máy sẵn chứ giờ tôi xuống lòng năm tôi hỏi.
Okay, yeah, cái count.
Nhưng mà tôi nghĩ
Okay, see you.
tuổi thì tôi cũng coi solo 4 năm.
I don't know.
118 á. Chắc là